The content in this video is not intended for legal advice, but merely one person's perspective on toxic leadership. Hi, so today, right, we're going to be talking about toxic leadership and what that means to you. This is the first interview of the YouTube channel, so let's go ahead and get right into it. So, for you, what does toxic leadership mean?
So I'm glad you asked that because from the beginning, I want to kind of explain, um, I guess, the difference between what leadership is supposed to be and what people are calling the toxic leadership. So, leadership is, to me at least, a very positive term. So when you look at people who are, every time I was called a leader, I felt like I was honored. Like it was something that I was supposed to live up to, that everything that I was doing, I need to bring it up a notch to be better at everything that I was doing. So not just being in that position of responsibility. So I think sometimes when we look at people who are in charge, we call them leaders automatically. And that's one of those things in one of my big pet peeves for the army. Just because you are in a position of leadership, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are the leader. Leadership to me is more of a status. And you have to take it, not just take it seriously, but you have to realize that you have to grow in that position and you continuously have to grow and improve yourself. So a lot of times when people are called leaders, they automatically think that I'm a leader, I'm a boss, I have authority. So they're confusing that with what leadership is supposed to be. So what is leadership, right? So before we talk about what toxic is, sometimes it's easier to look at the positive example to know when something is negative or something is toxic. So positive examples to me is really like a person that you work for, you work with, that just makes you want to come to work. So that's to me, whatever they do is through their personality to what they say to you, how they act, how they set the example. It just gives you that motivation without specifically, saying certain things that they want you to come to. You want to come to work. You want to do a great job. You want to be there. You want to learn. You want to grow. You want to live up to those expectations that leader kind of sets on you. And that's the difference to me when you look at people who are toxic. Toxic people, generally speaking, are merely like managers of tasks. And sometimes they even do that poorly. And that, of course, affects us when we work for people like that. So when you cannot manage, the task properly, when you cannot manage talent properly, that really affects everybody and how they feel about coming to work. So to me, that's the difference. And I feel like if we start to make that difference, between leaders and toxic people who are in positions of responsibility, we really give the credit to leaders what they're supposed to be like. So when you call somebody a leader, they're supposed to feel proud. It's supposed to be a compliment. Not that what we normally do in the army, we call everybody a leader just because they have the rank for it. And I guess we can talk about that more. How these people get in these positions of responsibility sometimes is merely because of rank, it's not because of merit. So leaders, somebody who owns the merit, they deserve to be there because of the way they are, the examples that they set, the qualities that they project on other people, versus the people in positions of responsibility who have actually a hard time being there, and they are there merely because of rank. And we see them all the time, right? We see them actually using their rank to accomplish things, and that's to me the difference. It's hard to recognize it. I think it's hard to recognize it when you're a brand new person. Then you just feel like, that's my boss, that's my leader, right? Because that's what we call it. And that's why I want to make that differentiation between the two. Because I want people who are new to the army to understand that just because somebody's in charge, it doesn't necessarily make it a leader. So when they treat you unfairly, when they pull too much work on you, when you really don't want to come to work and work for that person, because they are toxic, they don't deserve the title of being a leader. Because somewhere down the road you're going to meet those people who deserve that, and those are the people who need to be called leaders, so then you appreciate it, and when you need to grow in that leadership position, you know what you're supposed to look like.
Yeah, so it seems like it's an oxymoron to put toxic and leadership together, right? So it's kind of counterproductive. We don't want to take away, what you're saying is that we don't want to take away the value of what the word leader means, because those are the actions that people are doing correctly, right to others, right to the
Right.
mission, right to everyone else, right to themselves. versus the toxic, let's say, managers, right? Um, Throughout the army that are not doing these positive things through their actions, but just establishing dominance through their, through their authority of words. You know,
Right. I feel
yeah.
like you kind of have three categories of people who are in charge. You have the leaders, the people who inspire you to be better, to do your job, to learn, to be there. The people you want to work for. And I feel like it's almost like it's a feeling. I want to come to work. I want to work. And unfortunately, the problem I think is that we start to associate, the feeling of wanting to be in the army with the person. And we all know that people change. So then when your supervisor leaves, then we have a hard time because they
With the
maybe
transition,
with the
yeah,
transition, right?
yeah.
Especially if you get somebody who's toxic.
Hmm.
But we have to remember that even that toxic person is only temporary. And unfortunately, just like your leader was temporary, the toxic person was temporary. And I once asked my supervisor, I wanted a role model in the army. That was my dream. I want to be like somebody. I want to have somebody I can call and ask for advice. And I've never found that person in one, right? I found it in multiple people. I've learned from multiple people. And one of my supervisors, which is the best advice that ever they gave me, and they helped me actually stay positive about the army, was learn from the negative examples. And unfortunately, I've had more negative examples than positive examples. But what did that do for me is that helped me grow. So when something negative happens to you, when you work for someone toxic, or you work for someone who's just a manager, because you have those people too, they're just there to do the job. They're not there to be toxic, to create a negative environment. They don't use their rank to accomplish things, but they are just there to manage everything. They're not there to inspire you either. So they're kind of neutral. They're in the middle. So you have those folks, right? Um, and for somebody who is very zealous about the army, you came to the army, you love the army, you want to do great things, you want to progress, you want to inspire, you want to lead. The managers are also difficult to emulate because you don't want to be the manager. You want to be the leader, but you don't have an example of a leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think for me, what was easy is that I wanted to be the leader. I didn't know what the leader really looked like. But what my supervisor told me is everything you don't want in this person, you don't do the same. And it helped me grow a little bit and kind of learn, okay, I don't want to come to work and just manage tasks. I want people to want to be there. I want people to be enthusiastic about coming to work. And I think that's one of the hard things in the army. Like, um, people think that if you have this positive work environment, we are having too much fun, right? And positive work environment can be a very good learning environment. And I learned that the hard way. So I'll give you an example.
Go ahead.
My son was failing math, and I was trying so hard to teach him, and I didn't know how. And I was yelling and screaming and trying to, I don't understand what you don't understand. This is how this works. This is how it looks like. I draw all kinds of things and trying to show him. He just didn't get it. And then I was recommended by one of my friends to hire a tutor. So this guy comes, and he's probably listening. If he's listening, he comes and I listen to it because I'm also trying to learn. I said,
Yeah.
I want to see how he's teaching my son because I want to be able to teach my son too. I want to learn from him, and I'm listening, right? And they're laughing, they're joking around, and I was like, this is BS. He's not gonna learn anything. All he's doing is laughing, because that was my old mentality. If you're having fun, you're not learning, and that is so fundamentally wrong. So my son, long story short, I continued with the tutor because I knew I wasn't going to do any better, and I didn't have a choice. He came highly recommended. There was a lot of laughing going on for a very long time, but probably like a semester time, my son went from failing to straight A's. So I've learned a lot from that experience.
Wow.
That we can be positive. We can come to work and have fun. And I was one of those people who was serious all the time. It doesn't mean we have to joke around and make jokes. I'm not very funny by nature. But it's about understanding that people can come to work and look at it as a positive learning environment. And we, as people in charge, I want to call myself a leader, but I feel like it's something that comes from someone else. Somebody else is going to say, yes, she's a leader, and that's when I will feel like I am truly a leader because somebody recognizes those qualities in me. And so really, as people in positions of responsibility, we have that ability to influence that environment, to make it positive. And if we're not in position of responsibility, we have to remember that everything, all the ranks that we hold at one time are a stepping stone. Like pretty much you have time in grade, before you get promoted to the next one. So we have to use that time wisely to grow, to know what's expected of us at the next rank, and continue to push, because what happens is we're going to get there. It's just a matter of time. And when we get there, we need to be prepared to know how to change that environment, how to change the things that we didn't like as we were coming through the ranks.
Well, so I mean, how different of a person would you say you would have been if you didn't experience all the negative, toxic managers throughout your career?
Very different, for sure. Very different. I think the key is to remember that everything is temporary. That's one. So you don't get stuck in that moment in time and say, this is my life now. This is how it's going to be. This is a person that I work for. I had many people who told me that I wasn't good enough, like all the time, and I tell myself that already. So it's very hard to hear it when you give 100%. You tell yourself you're not good enough, and somebody tells you that you're not good enough. So remember, you give 100%, you're already good enough. And people don't recognize it. This is really their problem. So you have to kind of separate that so you can stay motivated, so you can, because sometimes with toxic people, right, you have to have your inner motivation. That's what's going to keep you driving through. Remembering that things are temporary, things are going to change, and it's just the nature of the system. People are going to move. They're going to change position. Nothing is permanent. You're going to move. So when you think about that, you have to step away from the small situation that's not favorable, that you don't like to be in, and remember that you can step back, that you're going to get promoted. You're going to be able to change certain things because you're going to have your own small, even if you do it at a small level, it still changes things. Influencing like 2 or 3 people, they're going to become leaders at their own turn. It still makes a huge difference. So we can look at the small picture. Little by little, we can change the system if we hang in there and we stay motivated. The worst thing that you can do is, trying to be disobedient or being disobedient, getting those unfavorable actions, against you because you speak your mind the wrong way. So there is a right way and there is a wrong way to do it. And it's, how should I say, it is the army way to some extent. We have to be respectful because of people's ranks.
Yeah, of course.
And it's tough sometimes to accept it. But as long as you accept it, you have to accept it thinking of the bigger picture. Thinking that you accept it, you're going to be able to move in ranks. You're going to get in positions that they are probably in right now. And you're going to be able to change the things that you didn't like for somebody else. And that kept me going. And yes, you slowly replace some people. And you're not going to replace everybody. There's always going to be someone that is there. But the one thing that you do for yourself, you build your reputation, you build your credibility, and people can hear you a lot easier when you have those things under your belt.
Is it possible that you can give us some examples of your experience when dealing with toxic leadership or toxic people in the army?
Yeah, so I actually, I think it was probably my first duty station that had the largest influence. I came from my first duty station, which was in Korea. Feeling like I wasn't going to be able to survive the army. It really seemed like every single thing that I did, that was the smallest thing that I did, was an issue. So, for example, I was working an admin job. I was reading the regulations because I was trying to understand what I was doing, and I didn't feel like the training that I had was good enough. And I was noticing that people would put the actions that someone would request, they would put them to the side even though they didn't have the authority to do so. So we would shred pretty much, somebody requested to move somewhere, and we would shred it because we say, no, the commander's not going to approve that, but we never actually send it to the commander for approval. So sometimes when you speak against a group, and everybody in the office was perfectly fine with that, well, I read the regulation and that's not what the regulation said. So now I felt like I was really doing my job fully. And of course, this was people that I knew, people that wanted to go somewhere and say, hey, do you know if my request to go to Fort Benning was approved? And I knew that I just shredded it the other day. And I just felt like, no, this is not the right way to do it.
So it never went on the commander's desk to begin with, but somebody made the decision not to.
Because generally speaking, the commander would deny it.
Yeah.
But I still felt like even the commander denies it. He has to deny it. It is not our decision to say, that it's going to be denied. So I spoke against it, and I was new. From there, pretty much everything kind of came down. If I was late, 10 minutes prior, to formation. I was late for those 10 minutes. I was held accountable for it.
Would you call that reprisal?
Yes, absolutely. But at the time, I did not understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like, well, maybe they're right. They told me to be there 10 minutes prior to formation, and I wasn't. And 10 minutes prior turned into 10 minutes prior to the 10 minutes prior, right? And we know that story, to where people think this is a remedial action. But really, like you said, it was reprisal because I was speaking my mind and I wasn't accepting it. You get your counseling statement and you roll your eyes or you have some type of gestures or anything, they consider it to be disrespectful, and I was counseled for that. And
it's so interesting that you kind of bring up that experience, because although that leader, that person was in their right to do that, right, in their authority to do that or responsibility to do that, it's really crazy how you can actually pinpoint it out to, okay, well, he or she, this leader, is not doing it to certain people but doing it more stringent to me. Why is that? And it kind of all comes down to the funneling point of, maybe this could be reprisal. What should I do about it? And that kind of goes into our next topic, which is, if you're dealing with somebody that's a toxic manager, a toxic leader in the army, should we do something about it or not?
So absolutely. I think it's so going just a little bit back to the situation that I was in. I was brand new. I didn't understand the army. I didn't understand, what I could do about it. It was kind of tough to say, I'm being discriminated against, because you don't want to play the victim. You want to be strong. You want to say, well, this happens, yes, I was late. You want to accept your blame, which is, is part of it. You have, when you, like you said, the person is within the right. But that is, again, the common sense leadership factor that a lot of times, many people don't really use. And that's what I call them. Sometimes just managers, they may be like right intentioned, right? But they still just follow the procedure. They don't ask, they don't care, they don't want to say, well, when you put that paper to the side and we don't go through the process, how does it make you feel about what you do? Because I started to feel that I was useless. I'm here to type things, to do things, but at the end of the day, we're shredding stuff. What am I really doing? I'm wasting my time. I'm not even helping people to try to get them what they need, and that's my job. So I'm not doing my job, and I came to the army to do a job, and I'm not doing my job. And I'm just being told that I do that because I said so. And of course, we are, one thing that people don't understand, like sometimes we come in and we can be 18, 19. I was 21 years old. And some people are older sometimes. We as supervisors, we need to respect those people as adults. And I'm learning that raising a teenager. They are adults, they are grown. Well, he's not an adult yet, but he's growing into an adult. And I need to teach him how to be that responsible adult. When our 18, 19 years old, 17 years old come into the army, they are adults. They're earning a paycheck, they've made a decision for a career choice, and they need to be respected that way. And I feel like oftentimes we don't do that because we're older, because we think we know better, because we've been around longer, because we have kids of their age. None of that stuff really matters. They put the uniform on, they are adults. And that counts for respect. And I think what I experienced at first with toxic people in positions of responsibility, I know it's longer than just saying leaders, is the fact that I wasn't respected as an adult. I was treated like a child. I was treated based on my rank. And that's the mistake that we make, It's like, treat people like adults, treat them with respect, and then you will get the same thing back. And I'm learning that by raising a child, Then I can see that if I respect him, he respects me. I used to demand respect. I am the parent. And it's kind of the same thing that happens in the army. I am a sergeant first class. I am a staff sergeant. I am a warrant officer. I'm a captain, whatever the case may be. I demand respect, I don't need to earn it. And I think that's a very big misconception. It may have worked a very long time ago, right?
Yeah.
But we are different now, We have people who are educated. They come from different backgrounds. They are people that are very intelligent, very articulate, much more than I was when I came in. And we need to respect them. We need to hear them. So kind of deviating just a bit, right? But what do we do about it? Well, first of all, it's tough, when you don't know what to do. But that's kind of like why we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to tell people there is something you can do. And oftentimes what happens is you've heard somebody who's done something about the problem that was similar to yours, and they got no results. As a matter of fact, they got reprisal, right? They were moved away from the unit, they were treated badly, they were discriminated against, much worse than before. So now you're thinking, if I do the same thing, it will be the same end result. Well, I would say that not necessarily, right? First of all, you only hear a little bit of the story. What happens behind the scenes is much more. Well, sometimes when you make a complaint, and there are multiple ways, right? You can use your chain of command, right? So remember, like, if the person who's in charge of you is the person that you're making a complaint of, you can skip them. And it's difficult to do so, but you can tell, I want to talk to this person who is your supervisor, technically, you know? And if that person doesn't give you anything, they have to give you a solution. You know, hearing you out is not good enough. And you can ask them, right? You can say, can you explain to me exactly how you're going to address this problem? So then you understand. If you're comfortable with the solution, then you take it, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to see how this works. And hopefully it solves your problem. So if it doesn't solve your problem, it doesn't mean you have to stop, right? You can go back to this person and readdress it. So give them feedback, right? You did this about it, and this is why it worked, or this is why it didn't work. If the person wants to continue to address the issue, it's great. If they're considering solved, you can move on to the next person, right? So this is a chain of command. When you move through your chain of command, and sometimes it's like the support channel, so like your NCOs. Move through your NCOs. If your squad leader doesn't hear you out, if your platoon sergeant doesn't hear you out, then it's the first sergeant. And then you gotta keep moving. Then it's the sergeant major, right? And it's like, keep moving, because these people are there in those positions to solve problems. They're not just there to be in their office, right? They have to solve problems. They have to make a positive work environment. And you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Meaning that you have to tell yourself that they are leaders and they want to be leaders. So they want to create a positive environment. They want to solve the problems. They want to know. So just imagine yourself in their shoes, right? They're a high position. They don't interact with everybody. They know what's going on. They can't solve your problem because they don't know there is one. So bring it up, right? At least give them that opportunity. That is one option, right? So I'm not saying which option to take. I think the person needs to take the option they're more comfortable with.
Yes.
If they start to feel like my chain of command is corrupt, right? Or my chain of command is not going to listen to me. My chain of command is a certain way. It's okay to feel a certain way, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you could be wrong, right? It's just your impression of it. The second alternative, depending on the issue, right? If it's just a work environment, a hostile work environment, right, that's not based on your gender, your race, you know, all the equal opportunity type of concerns, then you go to the Inspector General, so the IG, right? And if you don't know who the IG is, you can go ask, and you can literally go ask your supervisor. And I have told before my supervisor, like, literally, I will make an IG complaint regarding this issue. And you can choose to do it, however, sometimes it's tough, you know, but I wanted them to know, you know, because I didn't feel like it was this hidden thing, you know, it was a problem. We had a problem. I was unhappy with what was going on. It wasn't addressed. The person that, you know, sometimes they are the problem or part of the problem, so they need to know. Of course, you don't have to do that. If you know who your IG is, it's confidential, you know, you can step away from your office and go talk to the Inspector General. And like we said earlier, this is not to give you legal advice, right?
Yeah.
But just remember they are there. And the IG can also give you advice. So you say, this is my problem. This is what I want to do about it. What is the best way for me to address it? So what happens next, right? Sometimes the results come back inconclusive, right? There is an investigation going on. You do your sworn statements. They gather all the evidence that there is. And the case comes back inconclusive. And then you sit back and say, I don't believe in the system. The system is flawed. You know, it's flawed. It doesn't work. Well, so you have to be fair, right? They have to collect evidence, just like forensic science, right? They collect evidence. So they can only collect the evidence that is there. And sometimes it's difficult. That's why when you have an issue with someone, it's highly recommended you avoid the one-on-one conversations. Bring somebody else in the room. And, you know, and just say, I would like somebody else to be present in the room. And preferably you want to bring someone who has credibility, right? So think about that. So I'm not saying that, you know, you have someone who is a very good person, a lot of integrity, but they have a couple Article 15s, right? For example, right? That may not be your best witness. You have to look at it from everybody's perspective.
Yes. Right?
So look from everybody's perspective and say, okay, this is a person of high integrity. I know that, you know that, everybody knows that. But on paper, they look like they may have a reason to be disgruntled, to support a cause that's not just, or like to lie, to like, you know, that's some of the things that you have to really think through the eyes of everyone. So bring someone. I sometimes brought in the room when I had issues with my senior raider, right? I brought my raider. And I knew my rater and my senior rater were kind of together, right? I knew that. However, I felt that, it's still your integrity is tested, when you write a sworn statement. And if you decide to lie, it's a really big integrity violation that you have to live with. And sometimes people do lie on sworn statements, that's for sure, right? But bring somebody in the room that has credibility, and avoid the one-on-one conversation. This way you start to think about building that evidence. So now what happens if you haven't done that, right? If you haven't done it because you didn't think about it, because you didn't watch this video.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never too late, right? You can still do the complaint, because what it really does is when a commander, sees these complaints, and sometimes you don't even know, you may not be the only one. The person in the office next door or in the platoon next door is doing the same thing, and you don't know because people don't like to talk about those things. They're pretty sensitive, right? You bring in a problem to somebody's attention, and the commander will see that. And then probably the first thing they do is a sensing session, right? A sensing session is anonymous. It gives people an opportunity to be more vocal, because now they can say things without fearing reprisal. So it can bring issues to the surface,
Yeah.
Even though you don't get immediate results or the results that you want. And what happens if you're being threatened, right? Or like somebody's actually taking revenge against you because you did that.
Yeah.
I was telling you earlier, like I had a supervisor who later told me, your IG complaint came back inconclusive. Now what? What are you going to do?
Wow.
It was tough, right? I was like, okay, what am I going to do?
Pretty blatant,
Pretty blatant. So
yeah,
it can't go that far.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to go, hopefully it doesn't go that far for most people, right? Pretty blatant. But what am I going to do? I'm going to still be standing. That's what I'm going to do. I know that what I said was right. I didn't lie. I maintained my integrity. I did the right thing. I leveraged the system. The system, it's only gonna get better as we leverage the system, so people can see the feedback. People can see what's going on, see why it's working and why it's not working. And I was prepared for the next blow, You give me a next blow, we're gonna go to the same process. And we're gonna continue to do that until somebody says, something is really wrong here. These two people can no longer work together.
Yeah.
Because it happens. You can do a complaint against someone and no one gets moved, right? And sometimes people prefer it that way, which can be okay if both people in the situation are mature. So you can have situations where people are mature. They don't take reprisal against you. I would say that is a very fortunate situation. I haven't seen it yet. I think reprisal, it's almost like a normal thing that people have. And it's difficult to get away. You have to be very mature, and normally you have to be a leader, right? And most of the time, the problems that you have in the first place is that person is toxic. So now you're expecting a toxic person to behave in a very mature, leader-like way. It's very unlikely.
Yeah, definitely.
Very unlikely, right? But nevertheless, you have to trust that only leveraging the system that is in place, you will be able to get justice in the end. If you don't say anything. So you have to think about the alternatives. If you don't do this, what happens? The situation continues. The situation gets elevated. And one of the things that you have to remember is that, like we talked earlier, right? You're going to make a mistake. We all make mistakes. And when you make that mistake, the person who's after you, per se, will notice. And not only they will notice, they will record it, right? They will counsel you. You make a mistake. They will threaten you now that you can get UCMJ action for something you did.
Off of one mistake, and it could be as small as showing up late to work, just a few seconds.
So what happens, right? Of course, you're not going to get R15 because you were late one time, right? Repetitive behavior. However, what happens next? Now you start to feel like they're after you. I mean, it's a natural feeling. Now you start to feel like you have to defend yourself. You're going to make another mistake. And it doesn't matter when you make another mistake. You're going to make another one. And whenever you make the mistake, they're going to be watching. And that's the problem, right? So as you make mistakes, because it's normal to make mistakes, and that's one of the things people saying, I'm not going to make any mistakes. Yes, you will. You will, because it's normal. And mistakes in the Army can be very small. Oh, I was late for 2 minutes. Did it affect anything? Nothing. It was affected, right? But now you have a canceling statement saying that you were late. Now telling you that repetitive behavior can cost you this and this and this in your career. So now you start to feel paranoid. When you're paranoid, you're not going to act yourself. And that's the key to remember. Now you're going to make mistakes because you're not yourself. You're going to say and probably do the wrong thing. But what is the wrong thing? The wrong things can be very small. They can be very small, right? So that's the problem. And what happens when you get that Article 15? Now you shift the power. Before you had the power because you had a case of being treated unfairly, of being discriminated, being, hostile work environment, whatever the case may be, the power is yours, because you were doing the right thing. And this person was being toxic and they're projecting this toxicity on you, right? So you don't feel that you're being treated fairly, or you actually are not treated fairly, right? So when you get the Article 15, all you do is now you shifted the power balance. Now the power is on the toxic person. They have the power because you are proven by that Article 15 that you have, I want to call it almost like bad behavior. An Article 15, it's bad behavior, right? It has to be corrected through a formalized method. You're saying that all the informal correction methods did not work. That's what really happens, right? And of course, it's it's hard. You have to have corrective methods. You have to do things anyway. Regardless, it's like you're building, you're growing the relationship with somebody toxic when you have to be corrected because you spend more time with them.
And now whatever credibility that you had at the moment, or throughout an investigation, throughout an inquiry, come out of this inquiry, what's going to happen is that all that's going to be shot, right?
Exactly. So like we remember talked about reputation.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, reputation is key. It doesn't matter what your rank is. So remember, treat yourself as an adult. Treat yourself as someone who needs to build a reputation, to build credibility, to maintain integrity. So then when your word is out there, when you speak something, people listen because they know that you have those qualities, right? So now the Article 15, now do I say that people that get Article 15s are bad people? Or no, but they are people who make mistakes.
Yes.
Right? So
Correct.
now your leader, your toxic person, doesn't have anything, on their record. They're clean. You have something on your record to say that you have bad behavior. So you're actually reinforcing some of the things that this toxic person says about you. Because you're not always in the room. Leaders will have closed door meetings, right? You're not there to defend yourself. So you have to remember there's an image. And unfortunately, like an Article 15 will take away from that image. A lot of times when you seek like legal advice, even when you go to like medical or stuff, they're asking you, is there a UCMJ action? Why are they asking you that? Right? Every time they ask me that, I was like, wow, they're asking me that because if there was UCMJ action, my case would be seen differently. That's what I feel. Is it true? I think it's almost...
We don't know. We really don't know.
But it's human nature, right?
Yeah.
Because you can only believe what you see. And what do you see? You see somebody who's done repetitive, negative behavior. And then you see a person who says, I'm only doing the right thing. You're a toxic leader. I haven't done anything. This person is out to get me. So you're shifting the power. So remember, everything is about power. How do you keep the power balance? How you keep power to you is by addressing the issue early on. Unfortunately, I can say that from my experience and from seeing not just personal, but also by seeing others in scenarios like this, it almost always ends in UCMJ action. Why? Because we're not happy. We are not happy in the work environment. We don't think that that person who is there should be leading us because they don't deserve it. They don't have the competencies, the qualities. They don't even try sometimes. As a matter of fact, they kind of do the opposite. They're trying to use their rank and the position to accomplish things. And we know that that's not right. Nobody wants to say, like, even my teenager, when I say, I want you to clean the yard. And he says, I don't want to do it right now. I was like, yes, you are. Why? Because I said so. And I could see his face. He's like, oh, Jesus, you know what I mean? Like, I'll ask you for 5 more minutes. So it's the same thing. And he doesn't earn his own paycheck.
Yeah.
He depends on me. So, but these are mature, we are mature people when we come into the service. And we are treated sometimes as being immature. And that's kind of, to me, the disrespect part, I feel disrespected when someone says, do it because I said so. Or do you see, I am a major, I am a captain, I said so. And I look at that, and automatically to me, the level of respect goes to 0. And it's very hard, right? Because the Army says you're going to respect a person because of their rank. And that's one of those things that I feel like the misconception of everything is. You can get respect, I would say, quote unquote, because it's not true respect. Is I'm going to do what you say. But respect is much more than that, and we know that. I respect you. You don't have to tell me what to do. If I know what to do, I'm going to do it. And
Yeah.
I'm going to do it really well, because we all know I can do things. Do I do it really well, or do I do it halfway? How do I do it also matters. In most jobs also matters. The results are not that black and white, right? And I do it much better when I have that inspiration, that motivation. And the army, I said earlier, like the army has all the tools in place. Look at the Sarmiya values,
Yeah.
lead by example. And I've asked people before, and you can even ask your supervisor. Sometimes ask your supervisor, like, whatever their rank is, what does he mean to you? Well, I heard the book answer so many times when people say, well, you have to expect people to do exactly what you would do, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's more.
I've heard the book answer a lot of times too, and very rarely do I ever get a very honest opinion, like from the words of what someone would think of on their own.
And that's the key, right?
Yeah.
Because so I've learned after 17 years in service, and this is all on me, right? And it's not something I'm actually not proud of, but I would say it because I think it happens to a lot of people. I've learned that leadership is a learned behavior, right? And when I learned that, at first I wanted to deny it. No, that's not the case. We are born like that. I was the girl on the playground who wanted to take charge. I was a leader. And that is exactly, when you look at it, that is exactly the misconception. Just because I want to take charge doesn't make me a leader. A lot of people are like that. And I was like that. When I was a brand new sergeant, you're a leader. Oh, now you're a leader. I was like, okay, well, great. I want to be in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Is really being a leader just wanting to be in charge, or knowing how to be in charge? Right. So a lot of times that we look at people behaviors, right, and the first thing we do is just like you were saying earlier. You have the right to cancel someone because they were late, because they were disrespectful, because they said something, right? And yes, you have to be careful as a leader. You have to treat everybody the same, right? So you got to make sure that if you do make an exception for someone, as far as pull them to the side and talk to them, you will do that to everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's the important part. So treat people the same. Fairly, don't make assumptions, right? And that's one other thing, But the first thing you should do when somebody's late, you may want to ask them what's going on. What happened? And of course, and then you can tell them, you can talk to them, right? If the answer is always the paper, then you have the first sign of toxicity. I'm going to counsel you because I can. But I'm not going to ask you what's going on. I genuinely don't want to know. I don't care. Because what happens when I ask what's going on? I have to be willing to do something about it. And that's the key. A lot of times we don't get paid enough, right? We have so much responsibility early on. A sergeant, a section leader has a couple of people at the least, right? And really, if those people are facing life difficulties, now you as a Sergeant E5 that barely makes ends meet, right? You have to be able to help them. You have to take the extra time to do something about it, because we have to care about each other all the time, right? The wellness of a person doesn't limit only when they are at work. But a lot of times we do that, so we don't practice what we preach. We say that we are a family, right? And that's one always been a very difficult thing for me to face. When people say, we are the Army family, your family's here. Yes, I spend more time with you than with my family. But family is not about the time you spend together, the blood relationships or things like that. Not to me. Family is about how you care about each other.
So the meaningfulness behind everything, right?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not blood related in the Army. We call each other family. Then how do we live up to that, right? Because that's also a big word, family. Family to me is that, you're going to have my back. And do we really have each other's back? And that's another, like, I think earlier on we were talking about how do you recognize toxic leadership. Well, does that person really have your back? Do you feel like they have your back? Do you feel this is a person that when you are facing issues that's going to affect your work performance? Because that's generally when we need to talk to somebody at work.
Yeah.
If it's affecting me at work, if I come to work and I'm not myself, if I need to step away a lot because I need to collect my thoughts and get myself cope with anxiety or depression, or some of the things, or I need to make a lot of phone calls because I'm going through situations, takes away from my work. Can I talk to my supervisor? Do I expect that my supervisor is going to help the situation or make the situation worse? If they make the situation worse, they are toxic. And it's kind of tough to to make the relationship, but sometimes, it's almost like an abusive relationship. People they want you to give. There's no give on their end. So they just pretty much take, and there's no give. Even if you are a lower rank person, you are just a subordinate, you're brand new, you may have any rank. Even if you had Article 15s, even if all of these things happened, right? The bottom line is that a leader is going to give you a fair chance. A leader is going to have your back. A leader is going to be a person that you want to call. Oh, I want to call Sergeant so-and-so. They're going to help me. If I'm drunk somewhere, I don't call them because they told me the safety brief to call them. I call them because I know they got my back.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. How do you feel about the situation? It's a friendship in development. It's a person that you think of, when you look back and say, man, this person was fucking great. I want to be like them. And you're not going to be like them 100%, right? You're going to have other things about them. But you're going to say, I really like how they handled the situation. And they made me feel like I mattered. They didn't treat me just like another private or like another, whatever the rank is. Because sometimes we, even as more senior, have a long time in service, you can be treated and discriminated with and not really have that good relationship and not experience positive, leadership from your hires. So it's important to feel that way, and I feel like, we can't, the Army is not a regular job. We give so much for so little when it comes to the financial part, right? Most of the time, for most of our careers, we struggle financially to meet, and that's one of those things. If you are in a position of leadership, right, just think about those people. Remember where you were, remember how much they sacrificed to be there, and make it easier for them to be there. Make it fun to be there, make it feel like they are being challenged, that they are learning, that they are growing. So then they feel like they have something to look forward to coming in to work every day. They want to work with you, they want to be there, and you can see it. You can also, as a leader, observe your people and see what's going on, and see when they, and care about them. Because we all know, like, the suicide rates are pretty high, and imagine if that person was not there tomorrow.
Yeah.
How would you feel? Because you have a part in it. And that's the worst part. People say, no, I didn't recognize the signs. But the signs are there because people change behaviors when they're facing life challenges. And be there, you know what I mean? Be the first person that they can talk to. Be their lifeline. And it's going to change your life. And that's one of those things that I've learned. It changes your life. It makes you a better person. And it makes you want to come to work. So it's not just, a give thing. They're giving you things back. And I had sometimes people who came to me after 5 or 6 years thanking me for the things I did. It took that long, and I felt like, man, they don't appreciate anything I do sometimes. You're gonna go through that. But remember, it's almost like I said, multiple times, it's like raising a child. So for people who have experience with that, they're not going to appreciate it until they have to go through their own life challenges. I thank my mom after probably like 15 years of being an adult and being on my own for the sacrifice that she made as a single parent.
Yeah.
And it takes that long. And it's a very similar like situation. We don't always understand how great a person is until, we go through it on our own. So sometimes as leaders we'll make the hard decisions, right? Sometimes we're actually going to give somebody an Article 15, right? Because we've tried our best. And they are not learning, and they need to learn. And we need to make sure that we also treat people fairly. So we cannot, protect someone too much because we know they're facing things. But there's a lot of ways to help people, right? There's behavior health. There's a lot of, you have to use those resources. The same way we say we use the system to report problems, we have to use other resources to help people become healthy and whole, mentally, physically. And that's one of those things that I feel like I maybe for another time, right?
Yeah.
The mental wellness, is not just being physically fit. It's being mentally fit. And we ignore that part. And the first thing we do is when somebody is not mentally fit, we don't really understand that part.
Yeah.
Right? We only see the effects of it. The misbehavior, right? The disrespect, the attitude that they have, being late, right? So all these things, we just see the effects of it, and we don't want to dig too deep, because once you start to dig too deep, right, you have to do something about it. And what are you going to do?
Yeah, but a great leader would sit down and actually take their time, his or her time, and to understand why that soldier, why that NCO, why that officer is actually going through these issues when it's not themselves and everybody knows it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the key, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it takes It's a time to grow, right? Some maturity. So if you work for a person, sometimes a person, that's a manager, right? They're not a leader because they don't know how. I think being a manager is probably in the best situation you can be.
Yeah.
If you're a leader, of course that's ideal. But the best situation next to the ideal is going to be your manager. The person that comes to work and they just feel like I have a job to do. I need to get whatever the vehicle's ready. Like in my case, I need to get these briefings ready. I need to make sure that everything looks great, right? Or it depends on what you do. And that's all they care about. So they don't take the time to care about the people because sometimes they just don't know how. But they also don't create a negative environment.
Yeah.
They get the
yeah.
job
Kind of
done.
neutral.
It's kind of neutral. So
Yeah.
I think that situation, you're almost kind of okay, right? You may sit there and say, man, I want this person to do this. I want this person to be a PT and we can like run together and do stuff together. But they're not like that. They're going to do the run, but it's going to be just a fun run, right? Or something like that. They don't push themselves too hard. They don't have that motivation. They don't have anything extreme about them. Everything is kind of like plateau. But they're getting the job done. So it's okay, right? So it's one of those things to where like when you have people like that, I mean, you have to tolerate them, right? And the problem is really, you also have to understand that yes, there are schools of leadership, right? But how good are they on helping us understand, not just the basic things about leadership. Leadership is very complex, and leadership is about growth, right? So you have to grow as a leader. You're not going to go to a school, learn everything, and then it's just going to be good. You're going to have to take that. And what has to help us grow? Well, sometimes it's life experiences, right? Some of us have like very tough life experiences that help us learn a lot faster. And sometimes in maturity, and the maturity has just to do with who we are, and then somebody's more immature or like more mature, it's just who they are. And some people develop late in life, their understanding. And sometimes it has to do with emotional intelligence that we don't talk about in the Army, right? The GT score is not about emotional intelligence. No one really cares. And we also associate emotions with negative, right? But emotions is everything that we do, including anger and motivation, right? All these things that we say, we take pride of, they're there. Like it's all part of the emotions, it's not just all about, crying. And like I think people associate that, oh, you're emotional, you're crying, No, you're emotional, it's everything that you feel. Even the desire to come to work, it's an emotion. And I feel like we kind of shy away from that. It's still, I think the Army is still in the mentality transition, understanding how powerful emotional intelligence is. How many times you sat somewhere, on a parade field, right, and you hear this person in a high position, giving you a speech? How many times did you feel something? And that's the key, you know what I mean? Like most of the time we feel nothing, because the speech is good, it's good. It's like, oh yeah, that's great, you know what I mean? But it's very standardized, right? I've seen President Obama, very good public speaker, right? That you can just speak. You can look a person in the eye and you can speak because everything comes natural to you because you feel it.
Yeah.
And then when you feel it, you project that energy to everybody else. And that's really, to me, what leadership is, projecting this positive energy that you feel. And you cannot project energy that you don't have, right? If it's not there, it's just not going to be there. You can't project it. Nobody else will feel it. As a matter of fact, it's almost opposite, when you have negativity. And one thing I would say is like, just remember when people are negative, they have their own issues, right? So we can kind of flip the situation a little bit. You're the subordinate, the supervisor is unhappy, is angry. You have to remember they're going through stuff too. So it's not necessarily a good thing to say this person is toxic from the get-go. If you want to be, yes, they have a responsibility towards you. They are paid to have a responsibility towards you. So you can look at it that way and say they are supposed to do this. Yes, it's true. But then again, just like I said earlier, respect people, build that human relationship. You can also be the bigger person in the room, right? And ask this person, how are they doing? I was only once asked by someone and I literally was like touched for the rest of my life. So you look depressed today. Did you sleep last night? And this was someone like much lower, rank than me. And I was like, man, this person actually cares.
Yeah.
And they don't have to care. And that impressed me and touched me even more because they care, but they don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that reflects a lot on them and also reflects on me because they care about me. They obviously care about me because they know I care about them. So it's like a mutual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But do that, challenge yourself to ask your supervisor, what's going on? You seem angry today. You actually seem angry every day. Are you okay? How are you doing? And most of the time, the response from an angry person is not going to be very positive, right? It's going to be tough for them to open up because you have to also remember they feel like they need to project a certain image,
Persona.
right? How
Yeah.
difficult it is to open up to
Yeah.
someone. I didn't open up to the person who told me I was depressed. I just thanks. I appreciate that you noticed that. But it touched me and it brought in like it did do something for me. It made me think like, man, things are bad. This person noticed things are bad. I always thought I can hide it, but I wasn't hiding it, right? I was projecting. Remember, to me, it's all about energy. You're projecting something, and they can see, they can feel it, and it's negative, right? Because you know it's negative. So if that person, your supervisor, is anywhere in that position where they can grow, right? They're mature enough, even if they're angry, even if they're, you feel like they're always treating you bad, right? Because they're angry, because they have their own situation that they're dealing with, right? They're human too. You may actually change everything for them. First of all, they are going to be shocked, right? First thing is probably shocked to say, wow, this person cares. I don't care about them, right? But they care about me. I deserve that. That will be the mature thing. And I think a lot of people will do that.
Yeah.
They will step back and say, this person cares. Another thing that I would say is that you have to speak your mind. A lot of times people don't speak their mind because they feel like they're disrespectful. So, an example, I come to work and my supervisor says, where's this, where's that, or, everything that he asked me for was done. And I was like, it's already done. I marked the tracker. We have this tracker. It's done. It's all green. So why are you so angry? I was like, are you angry with me? I confronted it, right? And it's not disrespectful. Are you angry with me? Why are you angry with me? And he was angry with me. He was angry with me because I had a lot of appointments. I was taking care of myself. I was finally deciding to go to see a doctor. When my shoulder hurt, when my head hurt, I decided to do that. And we're going to save that for another time, right?
Yeah.
Taking care of yourself. But I was taking care of myself. What he was doing in turn, he felt like I wasn't there enough. Because they're used to having you there for a certain amount of time. They're used to turning around and giving you everything that they don't want to do or they have to. It all depends. I'm not going to say it's always like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just like that. And now you're not there because you take care of yourself. And now it makes them angry. You confront it and say, why are you angry? And they have to admit the fact that they're being selfish. They have to admit the fact that you have the right to go see a doctor. It's like, well, you have too many appointments. It's like, well, I have a lot of problems. My head hurts and my shoulder hurts. And it's really hard for me to actually function every single day. That's how bad it got. And of course, now the problem is on them, right? It's not your problem that they're angry, but you're confronting it. Yeah. You're not just letting it pass, and I accept your behavior. You can come angry at me for no apparent reason because you don't want to talk about it. I'm forcing you to talk about it. I'm forcing you to admit the fact that you're angry for the wrong reasons.
And I hate to cut you off, but that really says wonders. You know what I mean? Because it's there's this old saying that I've learned, right? Teach people how to treat you, and if you go to work every single day, you're a young soldier, and people are always on the grind, getting at you for things that you've already completed, things that you've done, things that maybe are not even your responsibility, then it's okay to ask those questions, but make sure that you do it in a most respectful manner, But eventually, just like you said, the other person has to face, right, the fact, has to come out and say it or lie to you, right, about what the real answer is. But, as long as you're chopping away a little bit at a time, teaching people how to treat you, right, some of that pressure, or should I say some of that stress, will eventually go away in most cases.
And I think what it does, it releases the pressure, right? Because what we do is bottle things up. And that's the worst thing you can do to yourself, is when you have an issue, you don't address the issue, right? You bottle it. And then the problem is that people, when you bottle things up, right, it stays in the bottle, right? So you have to, the bottling things up, it's, you can imagine it, right? It stays in the bottle, and the bottle is only that big. So believe it or not, it's going to come out. And when it comes out, it generally comes out in the wrong situation. It's generally geared towards the wrong people. you take it towards people who are not going to be able to defend themselves, or to like, they're just going to take it. And I say, for me, I took it against my son. And that is the worst thing, because now you have a guilt problem, right? Now you, because you realize that. So I've learned the hard way to let the problem be where it is and address it and not bother it. Yes, it is hard to control your anger, right? Because you're angry, right? Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it makes you angry that somebody is treating you, because you know it's unfair, right?
Yeah.
But you have to remember that, like I said earlier, you have a road to go. And if you want to stop down the road and take really long stops, like, you're gonna speak your mind no matter what. And how should I say, not necessarily no matter what, no matter how it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna have consequences, because the army is designed that way. It doesn't make you less of a person, right? And sometimes we feel like it's an ego, thing, that I have to be myself. Well, you are not an angry, disrespectful person. You know what I mean? That's normally how it comes out when you have those situations that are very difficult to address. But you're not that, you are a mature person who knows how to address a situation in the right way. And that's what you have to tell yourself. Just because I'm taking a different approach, it doesn't make me a less of a person.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make me different. Because I've heard people all the times, well, this is me. I normally blow up. Well, this is not really you. The blow up is an effect of the bottle. You've bottled things, and now it comes out. And it may come out towards the right person, which is great at that point, right? To some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But if you let it out little by little, if you actually never put it in the bottle, you know what I mean? It's going to
That's
be
your
better.
best bet, right? Yeah.
It's your best bet, right?
Yeah.
And be respectful, because I laugh inside, actually. It's really actually a great satisfaction. So try it like one time, right? Laugh inside when you are the bigger person. It's almost like, I have the power. I know I have the power. You're angry right now. You're angry for things that I didn't even do. And I know that. And you know that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make you admit it. So I'm going to be the bigger person. I'm going to be calm about it, because I know that's the way to show I'm the bigger person. Because once I start to be angry, I'm actually at your level, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to be at your level. I'm going to go above your level. That shows the mental strength. I'm stronger than you at that point. Like, it's a mental thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And mentally, I have the power, and I'm going to show you that. And I do that, right? And then I ask, well, why are you so angry with me? Are you angry with me, or you are just having a bad day? Right? And I, laugh, then you come across sarcastic, right? I was told that before. You're pretty sarcastic. I was like, no, I just feel like it's almost funny, that you're taking your anger on me. I was like, I didn't do anything wrong. You basically highlighting the fact that you didn't do anything wrong, that person is taking their anger in the wrong situation. That they have an ulterior motive, right? Because that's when I was given that situation before. He was mad because I had medical appointments. So he was trying to go after me with the work performance. And that's what I was telling you about. The problem is that they're trying to go after you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to say, look, Anka, like, can you space out this appointment? That's a mature person, right? But toxic people are not going to do that. They're going to bottle things. They're going to get angry. They're going to say, oh, like this, she's always gone. She doesn't care about this. They're going to make assumptions in their head instead of sitting there and having a mature discussion with you.
Yeah. Where is she at? She's not suffering here like I am,
Exactly.
Kind of
I don't care if
things
she has
like
a
that.
headache. I have headaches. I was told stuff like that before.
Yeah.
But you don't know how bad mine are. Like, you
Yes.
cannot judge me because of who you, I'm towards the end of my career. You're in the middle of your career. I've suffered through this for like 10 more years than you have. Like, those things is a mature person, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a person who can step back from the situation and say, look, I understand, man. She's like 10 years older than me, right? I need to respect that. She's been through everything that I've been through. She's already been through. That's a mature person. That's a person who recognizes the fact that, hey, you've been through more. It's almost like saying, it's hard to say somebody's better than you. How many people sit back and say, man, this person is stronger than me. They're smarter than me. They're like, how many times do we do that? It's kind of hard. It's like an ego thing. We cannot just sit there. And most people that are toxic, they have a huge ego, right? And the ego is a part of the toxicity problem, to where you cannot step back from that situation and just be mature. Just be human, be mature, and be able to have a good conversation with the person that you feeling like you're having a problem with.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. So if you want to try it one time. You have a really hard situation. That person has ulterior motives. Just ask them. Are you having a bad day? Like, and they're gonna come out like, well, why you say that? Well, you seem very angry. Your tone of voice is really high. It seems like I even asked them, are you yelling at me right now? Like, I'm sorry. I was like, I don't know, why are you yelling at me, Sergeant? You could say that, right? Sir, ma'am, are
Yeah.
you yelling at me right now? Of course, usually, like, try to calm yourself down because you made me
Yeah.
angry, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, I'm not yelling. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. You come across like yelling. You seem to be very angry. I'm so sorry. Like, I don't understand why you're so angry with me. Because I did everything that you asked. Is there something else on your mind? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like bottling things and they don't have the mental strength that you do. So automatically, if you want to talk about power, you have the power, you know? You're stronger than them. It doesn't matter what rank they are. You're already winning the situation. You're winning. So sit back, relax, right? Calm yourself down, and just let them dig the grave because
Mm-hmm.
that's what they do. And generally speaking, that's when you're gonna get your evidence too. Eventually, if you have to make a formal investigation, they're gonna get your evidence because they're gonna bury themselves. The calmer you are, the more in control you are, and the more you really know, the things that you need to talk about. And maybe you can solve it. That's a positive outcome of things.
Mm-hmm.
When that person realizes, man, I was angry because of this. I didn't even realize what I was angry. And this person made me admit it,
Yeah.
And we talked about it and we finally like buried the hatchet. That's a good outcome, right?
Yeah.
Is it rare? I mean, depends on the situation.
But you have to be in the equation. You have to be the stronger person in the room or in that situation for that to happen.
And you can be.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. It's like, remember, like, give yourself credit, you know? You are, like, you're mentally strong, Sometimes, we are super physically strong. And that's the evident part.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, like, we can work on our physical fitness, right? We can achieve results. And sometimes it doesn't even matter what age you are. But the mental strength is something that doesn't come across as obvious, right? So show that, because a person who's mentally and physically strong, it's unbeatable. It's the ingredients for success. And people oftentimes they recognize that in you before you recognize it, right? And the problem with that is that they feel threatened, right? Another thing that happens when you have toxic leadership is that they feel threatened, because it's nothing worse in their eyes, and I want to highlight that, than a person who's, let's say, new to the job, new in the army, younger than them, with less rank than them, all these situations, and they can perform. They can outperform them, and it's like there's nothing worse for a toxic person than to see that coming.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And what do they do, like in the older days? They try to assassinate, those guys that are coming up, the kings.
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
I'm gonna just kill you because I need to get. They can't assassinate you.
Yeah.
They're going to try to
Yeah.
and it's so
Sabotage. They're gonna try to get at you a different way, and it's not they. It's not all of them. It's just
the
some of them that are toxic. Yeah. That are
right,
toxic.
and that's the thing, right? When somebody is trying to do that, when they're angry with you, remember you have the power. They are not angry with you because you are, they consider to be you beneath them. They're considering to be upcoming, to be a threat to where they are. And it's a very stupid thing. I think it's almost like, it's almost retarded, Right, because what happens to us in the military, we're going to leave it.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it. And who's the person who's going to continue to push this organization?
It's a younger generation.
To be the greatest army in the whole world.
Yeah.
The younger, exactly. So when I look at people like that, it makes me feel good inside. It actually makes me feel that the work that I did is not going to be wasted, because this person is going to carry on the torch. Is going to continue to make the United States Army the greatest army in the world, because they are that competent. And I want them to know that. Why? Because they don't do it for the money, and that's the key. I know they're not doing it for the money, so I need to keep them there.
Yeah.
I need to keep their positive thinking, their motivation to stay and continue the work that I did. I don't want to leave the organization, and how bad does it feel when everything just goes, you work so hard and no one's there to continue your work. And that's one of those another traits of leadership. Treat people as your replacement. So you're in a leadership position, or you're the subordinate. Are you treated like you're going to be the replacement? Are they teaching you everything that they know? That's a really good character of leadership. Teach them, because they're important. You are going to replace me. I don't feel threatened by you. I want you to grow. I want you to grow as much as you can. And if you outgrow me, that is, to me, take credit as a leader. because you've done the work. And of course, that person competencies play in the whole equation a lot, right? But you play a role because you could have killed that. Toxicity is going to kill that person's motivation to grow
Yes.
in the organization, right? And how many times do we see people just leave? And it's tough, right? Because what do we hear? Like most of the time, it's competent people who decide to ETS, right? I'm just going to leave the army.
It's like, man, I can't believe it. I can't believe they're leaving. They should stay in, and
and there's nothing that you can do.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they had so much bad experience that they're saying, no, I love, working with you and everything was great. But I've seen it so many times, it's too late. They made out their plans, they had a bad taste in their mouth. They know that you're temporary because they are that smart. They're smart. They know that you're temporary and they fear the next person.
Yeah.
They think that you're rare sometimes if you're great. Because they had so much bad experience. And how do you change that, right? You try to change it, and that's the key. And as a subordinate, you also demand it, demand to be taught everything your boss knows. Learn it. And if they're not wanting to learn, to teach you, then demand it, right? So I've done that before, to where I was given this like meaningless tasks, and I was deployed. And I realized I'm away from my son, he was only 2 years old. And I'm sitting here doing meaningless tasks. I cannot do this anymore. I'm not learning anything. I'm not. I have to be honest with myself. I have plenty of free time, And I went and asked my supervisor, I need to learn your job. You have to teach me. I have to learn, not your job really. I don't think I said that. It was too soon. I need to learn my job. But my job is really to make their job easier. That's the point. And if you start thinking that way, and if the leader thinks that way, it's going to be a different type of relationship because it's a codependency to some extent. You're going to make me better when I'm your boss. And me as a subordinate, I'm going to make you better, but I'm going to learn in the process. So eventually I want to be in your position and be successful at it because I know how to do it. And almost every single time I got promoted, I knew I could do the job. People said, you're too soon. It's like, no, I know how to do it. I know everything that this person does. And of course, that's just tasks, right? So we're not talking about leadership now. And that's the misconception, right? And I had a misconception about leadership to some extent. You know what I mean? Because I felt like you're going to be a leader. You can get promoted to the next rank as long as you know how to do the job. But the job is just a small part of it. Inspire people how to do their jobs is the biggest part that no one teaches you how to do.
Yeah.
And I know we can talk too much about it because it's not going to change the system overnight. But the formal leadership education needs to be augmented, right? So there's some in place. But just teaching people, how to grow and how to develop, and it's a process. And unfortunately, what we always say, we don't have time. The up-tempo is too fast. We have to do this. But the benefits of it are so much greater, So that's one of those things that it's going to take some time, for us to understand as an organization, right? That the benefits of developing leaders and investing in leaders are going to outgrow, the fact that they're not always there to do the job. So hopefully as the up-tempo is probably a little slower now, there's something to focus on, But normally what we do is we shrink the army.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily address the problems of making better quality. We look at numbers, and that's the problem to some extent. And it's going to be an ongoing thing. I think what happens is that people tend to be more educated. And I'm not necessarily saying that education, makes you smarter or better or anything like that. But it helps you broaden a little bit of your little scope.
Yeah, broadening the understanding of how the world works and how the army works.
How the world works, how the army works. And when I did my degree, I realized that there's not so much different than what we think. Army leadership versus civilian leadership. We always tend to think it's so different. Yeah. But everything that I learned in my civilian education, I was able to easily apply. They talk about the same things, because people are people. And you treat people like people no matter what kind of job you do and what environment there is. I mean, of course, in the army, and the people will argue, in the army, there's a time and place, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. Yes, other organizations outside the army, they're going to have situations that are stressful. But how many times, for the most part, right? Because you do have the law enforcement and organizations like that, where life matters, like literally, things can happen and somebody can die. The medical field, right? The army is one of them, where we have that slightly difference, where sometimes you have to do what somebody says. And that's the point of building credibility, building a trust relationship, building a respectful relationship. When if you tell me to do something, I already know that you know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I trust you. So just do it and I will do it, right? Because I trust you. So it's that important, because at that point you want that person to be able to execute and execute it well.
Mm.
And if they trust you and you trust them, then it will be done the way it's supposed to. And at least you know that you've done your best, because the worst thing that can happen is that we wonder if we could have done better,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
that's the
And then
thing.
you just live with that regret, right? Like,
Right.
I could have, would have, should have, but I just want to say, really appreciate you coming down and
Thank you.
giving us your insight on what toxic leadership means. And it just blows me away just knowing that, um, like, your definition, your understanding of that term, it's just completely different than anything I've ever experienced. So I really do appreciate you coming down and giving us your advice.
No, thank you. I think it's a great opportunity. I think like so I'm towards the end of my career,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about the legacy. The time that I invested, I took away from my family, right, from my son. The time that I didn't spend with him, what was the time used for? And I live with some regret, right? And that's one of those things that maybe for another time we talk about that, right?
Yeah.
To balance your life, because it's very important to live a life with the least regret possible. I would say I don't
Mm.
know how many people live with no regrets. I think it's ideal, right? But the least regret possible. And then it's kind of like part of that, when you talk about leadership, when you want to come to work every day, you're gonna feel that the sacrifice you make, it's a lot smaller, and you feel like you give back. And then it's part of like, I always kind of still challenge myself, did I give back enough?
Mm.
And I hope that this is at least a small part of trying to give back from my experience with growing as a person in the army and sticking there, because what happens a lot of times, you give up because it's too much, it's too much. You don't want
Yeah.
to be in that
Yeah.
environment. So is it worth it to stay? It all depends on how strong your motivation is and what you do it for. And it's okay to decide either way. And that's one of those things that for whoever's like listening and watching, if you're at a situation where you really feel like this unhappy situation for you, these things that we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
they're not possible for you anymore. It's okay, because a lot of people feel like it's a hard thing to say, I'm going to leave the army. I'm no longer going to serve my country. But if you want to serve your country, you serve your country every day by just being a great person, being a great citizen. There's other career choices, that people serve every single, like literally, you know what I mean? Like the medical field, the firefighters, the police, like all these guys, they and women, they serve, right? So it's okay to say this is not my career choice anymore. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's about staying happy as a person and using your potential, your competencies for something good. And when you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're inhibited, then it's okay to let it go.
Yeah.
So I just want to leave that, just because I stayed for so long. I still admire people who have the courage to say, this is no longer what makes me happy.
Mm.
I want to do something greater, because everything that we do and we contribute to the society is going to make a difference. It doesn't have to make a difference right here in the army, make a difference somewhere else. And we need those people too to be there. So I admire people who can say that as well.
Yeah.
You know. But thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank you.
allowing me to speak so long.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No problem. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment below if you have some other topics you would like us to discuss.